Good morning. I know I've got a clergy shirt on today. It's Saturday. We have a dedication of the VFW Memorial in Glenfield this morning, and so that's why I'm dressed a little bit fancier than normal for a Saturday. Tomorrow morning we worship at 9 o'clock at Sutton at Mabel Lutheran. You're welcome to tune in and join us for worship. Today we look at Psalms 33, 4, and 5. Add one psalm to the prescribed daily reading from the program that I'm following, just because then it makes it easier on Monday. So I have three of them on Monday to look at. Psalm 33 is one of the psalms that is anonymous. It's not attributed to David or to anyone else. It's one of those that they really don't know who wrote it, and so they just agreed, hey, we're not going to put any name on it. It, like most of the other psalms, is made to be sung. And some of the psalms, as I've said, will have a, up in the header before the psalm even begins, it'll say, with a lute and lyre or with a 10-stringed instrument or whatever. Well, this one says that within the psalm. It begins, rejoice in the Lord, O you righteous. And then verse 2, praise the Lord with the lyre, make melody to him with a harp of 10 strings. And, and others will say like the lute and the lyre. And the lyre is a smaller stringed instrument that you would could hold on your lap. The lute is a larger instrument that's big enough it would be sitting on the floor. And we've all seen pictures of both. People playing the small lyre and then also then the big floor standing ones that the harps and stuff that way. And so there was a variety of musical instruments, and there are so many that we don't think about, like the pan flute, or putting water in bottles and getting different notes from blowing air across the tops of bottles. There's so many ways we can make music, and music is one of the praise ways of one of the ways to praise God. And I think about as you sit outside, you hear. You hear the birds singing, you can hear crickets chirping, you can hear, so many different, sounds of nature and the music of it, and, the different birds call. Some of them are obnoxious, but some of them are, really pleasing to the ears. So different melodies and different ways to make the music. Sing to him a new song, play skillfully on the strings with loud shouts. And, it's just, the shouts of joy, and you come to God, filled with whatever emotions you have, and you shout them out to God. You let them go to the music, and that the Lord hears. And verse 5 says He loves righteousness and justice, and so this psalm it's a psalm that calls all people to God, not just the Jewish people, but it talks about all people. Let all the earth fear the Lord. Let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of Him. Verse 8. So it isn't exclusive to the Jews or, exclusive of others, but it's for all people to come to God. Verse 12, this New Revised Standard says, happy is the nation whose God is the Lord. Many will read, blessed is the nation, or joyful is the nation whose Lord is God, whose God is the Lord. So when, it's just a reminder that when we follow God, that we have more blessings, that I don't know. I mean, it's so hard to say that we have more blessings, but we live in the joy of God. We live in the joyful expectation of eternity that way. Verse 16 kind of carries that through. A king is not saved by his army. A warrior is not delivered by his strength. The war horse is a vain hope for victory, and by its might it cannot save. Truly the eye of the Lord is upon, and so, we aren't saved by our earthly might, by our earthly prowess. We're not saved by our wealth or by our fame or any of those other things. We are saved by the power and the grace of God, by believing and trusting in God. The eye of the Lord is upon those who fear Him, the one who hopes in His steadfast love. So it's knowing God that is important. And this writer of this psalm is encouraging all people of all nations. He said, our soul waits for the Lord. He is our help and our shield. Let your steadfast love be upon us. So it's a plea to God to be looking out for the people and to remembering the people. It's also an encouragement for all peoples everywhere to look for God. Psalm 34 is again written by David, and it's written in response to, if you remember back or you want to look back to 1 Samuel 21, David had gone to Gad, I think, and then he was talking to this person there, and then he went on to Gath, and he was by himself. He wasn't traveling with an army. He wasn't didn't have any weapons with him, and so he was. And then he went to Gath after he left, and he was afraid then of the king of Gath, that this king was going to kill him, because this was what he had heard. So David pretends to be a madman, and the king says, "What have you brought this madman? We got plenty of madmen here. We don't need this guy." And so David pretended to be insane, and therefore escaped the whatever plot had been against him there. So Psalm 34 is in response to that, God saving him, or the saving actions that happened, that David lived through that situation. And my soul makes its boast in the Lord, that the humble hear and be glad. Magnify the Lord with me. Let's exalt his name. That's verses 2 and 3 of this psalm. But so it isn't to say that I did it on my own. And David realizes that the idea, the strength to pull it off, was with God, and God had anointed David as going to be the next king, and so David trusts that God is looking out for him, protecting and providing for him. Verse 17 and 18, when the righteous cry for help, the Lord hears and rescues them from their troubles. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted, who saves the crushed in spirit. And so again, a reminder that when we don't know where else to go, when we don't know who else to trust, go to the Lord, trust in the Lord. And Proverbs, when we get to Proverbs 3, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not rely on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will guide your paths. That's Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. To trust in the Lord, to know that I can't do it on my own, that God gives us the strength. And this is, when the righteous cry for help to the Lord, he hears them. And so we trust in that. And verse 19, many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord rescues them. So, David being chosen by God, and being blessed by God, still there are people out to get him. Even though he's found God's favor and all that, there are people out to get him. But David realizes and praises God for rescuing him and keeping them safe. Verse 20, he keeps all their bones, not one of them will be broken. David is giving thanks for his own safety, but in those words, none of his bones will be broken. Some people will relate that to Jesus dying on the cross, and that they didn't break his legs or anything that way. None of his bones were broken, and whether that's really a forerunner of that or not, but it is one of the reminders of how God protects those who are his. Chapter 35, Psalm 35, they're not chapters, they are each individual. But 35 is again a prayer for deliverance and protection from his enemies, and he knows that they are people who are after him. And in verse 4, let them be put to shame and dishonor, those who seek my life. Let them be turned back and confounded, who plan evil things against me. Let them be like chaff before the wind, and let their way be dark and slippery. He's not wishing any good upon these people that are seeking to harm him. And truly, I pretty much the same. I don't ask for good things for those people that are out to get me. Not that I have people out to get me, per se, but, it's really hard to, we're looking out for ourselves, and we're asking God for protection from ourselves, and he's not asking any serious illnesses or serious things to fall, but let them be put to shame. Let them be turned back. Let them be like chaff and blown away. Let their way be dark and slippery, so that, and it's, one of those days, like, lying and stuff, that's a slippery slope, we get onto those deals there. So, you're slip sliding away sometimes when you get caught up in the wrong directions. 11, malicious witnesses rise up. They ask about things I don't know, and they repay, my evil for good. Malicious witnesses. I mean, people that speak against us. And then verse 15 rather, again, David is saying, these people that are against me, he says, my stumbling, they gather in glee. They gather against me. Ruffians whom I did not know throw things at me. They mock me more and more, and so David is seeing, people out to get him, and it wasn't just his imagination. I mean, he fled from Gath because he was afraid for his life. He had to flee from Saul because he was afraid for his life, and and there are many times that he found himself, just having to fully rely on God. Verse 22, the end of it says, O Lord, do not be far from me. And I'm going to close with that today, just a prayer. O Lord, be not far from me. Because sometimes we feel that the Lord is distant, that the Lord doesn't know what's going on in our lives. Maybe he doesn't care, but, O Lord, be not far from me. Help me to know that you are as close as my breath.